Welcome back to the Relentless Growth podcast. I'm Chase Calhoun. I'm here with my good friend Jack. Jack, how are you doing today?
Doing great. Excited to dive in today.
Cool, cool. Well, I guess before we get started here, let's go ahead and share some wins for the week. If you want, I'll go ahead and get us started and do maybe a win and an update. Um, for me, I think a big win is I just got back from a Go Abundance. We've talked about Go Abundance in the past, but a Go Abundance event centered around leadership. So all the discussions were leadership based, and so some really good conversations and just sharing ideas and kind of running stuff over through some guys that are kind of active in the game of business and in all different types of business. So not just our business, but different types of business. So that was probably my big win. And I think along the same lines, just an update for me or business update for me. I got to spend some time after that conference with another successful home builder. So kind of doing our a little bit of what we're doing, new construction, build to sell, and then he does build to rents, but in a totally different market. So in Billings, Montana. So it's kind of cool to see some of the projects and the stuff he's working on, and just seeing how things differ a little bit. The similarities and the differences in a different market was kind of cool. How about you?
Yeah, it's been a really good week, a big week. So our probably my win would be we had our first meeting with the city on a project for a single family neighborhood. It'll be 174 houses, and we've been working on it for three, coming on 4 years now.
Oh wow.
It requires forced main sewer and cooperation of three different property owners, and so it's been a struggle to get to where we can actually all submit to the city at the same time. And so it's taken a lot of coordination over a lot of years. And so we submitted that and had our initial meetings this month. And so that's been a big win. And kind of speaks to what you were talking about of right now, we are just building multifamily. But we're actively trying to get back into the single family game. And so this would be one of those first things that would come on the docket for us. And so we're super excited about the future of single family. But right now, it's just not something that we're doing as part of our game. But we're excited to get back into it.
Very cool. Very cool. That's awesome. Well, I think today what we decide we're going to dive into is some tech tools for I would say real estate investors, but also I mean real estate investors, construction, and just general business. Um, and so I think maybe we can kind of go back and forth, talk about some of the stuff we're using and or have heard of that would be useful, and then kind of go from there. I guess I'll get us started, and I'm going to start with maybe some basic real estate investing tools. And this is probably stuff that maybe I used a little bit more early on, but I think would be helpful for anybody who's either investing in real estate or interested in investing in real estate. Um, and I guess for me, there's two that kind of stand out. We'll have to link maybe in the notes, but there's a free, just it's like a free rental property calculator that's online. So it's like nothing overly fancy. And I don't know if you ever ran across it, but it's something that I used a lot earlier on, and it's just real easy. Like if you're looking at buying a rental property or building a rental property, you can punch in the real basic numbers on it, and then just get kind of a calculation on, does it cash flow, and if it does, what's the cash flow percentage, and then it'll kind of show like a running. You can type in some percentages for rent growth and appreciation, so it'll show a running total. I use that a lot earlier on when I was looking at whether or not I should buy a rental property and fix it up. It allowed me to punch in some of those basic numbers. I know you've done some investing. Do you have any tech tools or calculators that you've used when you're evaluating or running deals?
I've used that same one in the past. Yeah, it's super quick, super easy. There's nothing fancy about it, but
Yeah.
it works. And so I've certainly used those in the past. Kind of the biggest, I'll call it a tool, but it's not a tool that we use now that we're building, is really just looking at historical cost. I mean, that's our big way that we analyze deals mainly is, hey, what did it cost us to do the last time? What's changed since then? And so it's not a tool necessarily, but I think there'll be kind of a theme as we talk through this stuff. I think there's a lot of really cool tools that overcomplicate the process. And then
Yeah.
there's some simple ones that are really helpful and really effective. And so we tend to be on the low tech end of things, I would say. But historical cost is really how we do most deal analysis at this point, whether it's development and or building. And so that's kind of the biggest thing we look at on the front end is, hey, what are we looking at cost wise? What did it cost us to do the last time? What's different about this site? And so that really helps us to drive those initial decisions.
Uh, so when you're looking at historical costs, how are you guys in your business tracking historical costs? Are you using QuickBooks or Excel spreadsheets, or how and
So
how
yeah,
detailed?
sure. We use an accounting software. It's called BuildSoft. It's construction specific. That's it's actually on our list this year to update to a newer, a more modern accounting software. But we've got historical cost on development where we can track what it cost us to develop per unit, what each individual cost was. Same thing on the building side. We track certain costs per building and certain costs per unit. And so we can go back over time. Same thing on the single family side. It's almost most useful on the single family side because obviously we both build some of the same house plans. And so, we know, hey, this house plan is going to cost X or Y or Z to build. And, at certain times it might bite you, through COVID, historical costing didn't work super well. But yeah, we religiously track everything on a build. And so we can look back and say, hey, what was it here, here, here? And then we can predict out, hey, we think it'll, just over time, cost will go up. And so it'll rise a little bit. But yeah, we're very religious about tracking that.
Yeah, I think with any type of investing or construction projects, I think tracking actual costs and then using that to base your investment decisions is super important. I know early on, when because I first started doing buy and rehab projects, the first couple I did, like I didn't track it at all, and so I had nothing to go off of. And I learned pretty quickly that like just keeping a running total of everything I spent money on for a project would give me that historical cost on that project. And then I knew if I was doing something similar, I could kind of take what I spent on the last one and use it to estimate for the next one. And then obviously, as I've progressed with what we're doing, that's gotten better and better. Um, I would say one of the main reasons that I am moving towards and like new construction more than the rehab stuff is because that historical cost, therefore, um, future estimates is much more. It's much more consistent. That's a big deal, and it's exactly to your point. Like right now, we're building a bunch of like the same house plans or duplex plans or whatever, and so it's very easy for us to go in and say we spent this much building this same house 4 months ago. This one may be slightly different because it's more sloped or less sloped or whatever, so we may have some additional foundation costs, and or there was a price increase in this or a price increase in that. Other than that, it should be almost identical cost. And so I would say having tracking that data well, and then using it to base or underwrite whether or not you're going to do a deal is very valuable. I don't think we've found an amazing way to like do that simply. We've done it on like spreadsheets in the past, which isn't, we still do our budgets on spreadsheets. I don't know that that's the best. Our construction company is running on QuickBooks right now. So our accounting software is on QuickBooks. One of the things on our to-do list in the very near future is we'll probably try to bring in a consultant to help us build out, because I know QuickBooks is capable, but it's not like a cookie cutter. But I think it'd be really nice to have like some kind of job costing within QuickBooks where we can upload that estimate into QuickBooks and then track it real time and see where we're at, and then also use that same thing and kind of moving forward. Um, Anything else as far as like techie type or software tools that you guys are using for accounting or estimating or job costing?
We use a product. It's from Autodesk, same people that produce CAD. We use a product called Build. Um, it's a real cheap. I mean, cheap. It's $100 a month or something like that. But we use it a bunch on the development side. It allows you to import plan sets, and then it'll do comparisons between like your last version and your new version, and it'll redline all the changes. And so it'll automatically pull up, like if our civil engineer prepares like two different sets of plans for us, we can tell all the differences, what's changed, what hasn't changed, and it allows us to mark them up pretty easily and send back. Um, and it integrates really well. Autodesk has a huge, they have way more capable software than we use. But it's similar to a Bluebeam or something like that, if you've heard of it. But it's a PDF viewing and editing software that also directly compares two sets of PDFs for changes. And so we found that to be super useful. It's a pretty simple tool, but we use it. Tyler, who handles all of our development, he uses it every day.
That's really cool. It's called Build.
Yeah, Build.
Okay, cool. That'd be one that we would have to check out. I've never heard of that, but that sounds like it'd be very useful. I think we're still doing it in like Adobe or something. So
Yep.
very cool. Cool. How about so the next one for me would be like property management. That's something again where I think about, like, for me, I started with a really small portfolio and it's growing, so it's like evolved several times. And I think I was just having this conversation with somebody the other day, but it's like I started with, the first couple rentals and it was like in Excel or not at all being tracked. And then I went to cozy.co, which was a free property management software that was eventually bought by apartments.com. And then I used apartments.com for years. It was a totally free for the owner property management software. And I still recommend it to anybody that's like that 10 or less units. It'll allow you to collect rent online, screen tenants online, um, and do some very, very basic accounting stuff. As we grow, we have just switched over to AppFolio, which is probably one of the more well known, more robust property management softwares out there, and it's very capable, and it seems like there's a lot of good features to it. The one issue that we've been running into since this was fresh, this is like last month we switched over, is it's like we don't know what it can do, and so trying to bring in, we actually brought in a consultant who's used it for years, just to be like, can you tell us if we're doing it right, and then tell us what we're not using and we should be using. But as we're getting more acclimated to it, it seems like it's going to be really helpful for us on the property management side. How about you guys? I know you guys run a pretty decent portfolio. What kind of property management software are you using?
Yeah, so we still use, obviously, on the property management side, we're still mainly third party managed, and so all of our properties run on Yardi,
Okay.
and so we don't have a ton of experience with it, to be honest. I think it's been great. I think as we've got more into maintenance and like some other things, there's just some things that we wish were a little easier in terms of being able to change workflows. Um, but overall, we've been happy with it. But we don't interact with it nearly as much as our property management team does, and so we're probably a bad example to handle a recommendation. But I've heard from people of hugely varying portfolio sizes that AppFolio is kind of the new standard from small to some really big portfolios. It seems like it's really catching on lately.
Yeah, I think they're all probably good. So same thing. I've heard a lot of people use Yardi. I've heard of Buildium, and I actually got to
Yep.
sit down and see what Buildium looks like from the owner's standpoint just recently, like as of last week. And so it seems very similar to me. I think they're all fine. I think the biggest thing is just picking one that you want to use long term. I feel like property management software, probably accounting software and property management software would be very similar in that, like, kind of once you choose one, they're very sticky, and it's like
Right.
it's a little knowing because it's fresh for me because we just switched property management softwares. Like, it's really hard to switch, and so I say whatever you use, it's like try to do the research and make sure it's something you're going to be okay with using for a while. Because once you make that switch, it's kind of tough to switch back over. One thing with the property management software that we're looking at right now is like additional, so like tech or software tools that we can add on to it. Um, I've seen some of them. We talked recently about AI, right? I saw one a while back, and this is probably 6 months ago, but it was somebody with a decent sized portfolio. So I think somewhere between 800 and 1,000 units. And they had an add on. It was like a third party add on to their AppFolio and it was basically an AI bot that did their rent collections. And so it was sending emails and text messages as if it was a person in their office saying, "Hey, rent was due on the 1st. Today's the 6th. Are you able to make a payment today?" And then like tracking the conversation. So it would follow up automatically. And if it said, "Hey, we'll pay on Friday," it would follow up on Friday. And it was totally AI. And then they've seen a huge increase in their rent collections by using that. So we're not using any of those yet. That's something that I would really like to in the future. Um, and the other one would be we're looking at a maintenance kind of add-on with AppFolio. So they've got it's an additional fee. You got to pay a little bit extra, but they'll kind of again, I know you guys use third-party management, so this wouldn't really affect you unless you brought management in-house. But one of our big issues has been management, especially after hours. Like we know that barring like a some crazy emergency like a fire or major flood, like we're probably not going to fix a maintenance problem at 2 o'clock on a Sunday afternoon. But I think our tenants, from a customer service based basis, like they really want to know that we're seeing their thing and that it's important to us and that we're responding quickly. And so I think it's more about like responding quickly, saying, "Hey, we received this maintenance request. We've generated a work order and we'll get to it first thing on Monday morning." And that's been a challenge for us. So I think doing like that add-on where we would get that level of service, specifically with maintenance requests, that's probably something we'll add on to AppFolio. Anything else with the
Yeah.
property management stuff?
Well, I'd be super interested to kind of continue that conversation on maintenance, probably some other time. But we've taken on maintenance at all of our sites now, so we handle the 2 a.m. calls and the all the fun stuff. Fire alarms are going off, and so it is a challenge. And I'm going to be really interested to see how these AI tools develop, because I think it's a big advantage I can see, but I can also see the human interaction in maintenance being super important, because when things go wrong, people are really sensitive to how it's handled. And so I'm going to be really interested to see if AI can truly bridge that gap and make people feel like they're being taken care of, versus, if you have a rock star, they just naturally make people, hey, they make people feel safe, feel good about it. And so that's going to be something that we're tracking and we're really exploring over the next couple of months as well.
Yeah, so we're in the midst we're like literally going back and forth right now, trying to decide if we bring on somebody to handle like dispatching the maintenance calls or just handle the kind of the maintenance department for us as far as scheduling and answering the phone and doing all that stuff, or go with this add-on to AppFolio. Now the add-on it's interesting. It's the hybrid. And so I originally thought it was just AI, and it's not. They have a call center, and the exact reason they have the call center is they want if somebody calls and because the tenant may feel like it's an emergency. It's probably not really an emergency, but the tenant may feel like it's an emergency. They want to talk to like a real person. And so they do have like a real person that's going to answer the phone and take that maintenance request, but then they use AI to help dispatch it. And so they're handling these for a bunch of different people. So they're going to type in what the issue is, and they'll actually use AI to help troubleshoot the maintenance issue. So if it's something that can be troubleshot, they'll use AI to do that, which is something we've talked to our team about doing, and or dispatch it. But yeah, I go back and forth because I agree. I think using a computer, just a computer to do it or AI to do it right now, probably isn't quite there yet. But in the future, it may be something that's going to get it's going to get better. One thing we've talked, and I think we talked about this already, so we won't spend too much time on it, but is like I want my people to know how to do it really well, so that if we do decide to implement either this third party vendor or AI tool or whatever, it's like we can use it, but we want to make sure we still know how to do it well, so that we can make sure it's being handled correctly and can kind of fix it if needed.
100%.
The other one that comes to mind for me that's a tech tool that we use that's for property management would be Showmojo. Have you ever heard of that?
I I have heard of it, but we haven't used it.
Yeah. So it's a I guess it's like kind of a software add-on or whatever, but it's used for I guess we contact lists showings. And so and I've seen people show units a bunch of different ways. My personal favorite is to have somebody that knows sales, like go meet the potential tenant and like show them the apartment, because you get the opportunity to kind of sell them on it and help move them forward in the process. One thing we found, both from like kind of like a safety thing a little bit, but then also just a feasibility thing, is we start getting more and more units that we're trying to lease up. Like having somebody go in person every time isn't necessarily feasible. Probably way different when you have an apartment complex that you're trying to fully lease up. Like it definitely makes sense having somebody there all the time. But when we're scattered site, it's a digital lockbox, and so it allows somebody to. So it'd be good if somebody's like managing properties remotely. They can go online, they can schedule a showing through Show Mojo, and then Show Mojo will like screen them, just very basic, get their license info and stuff like that, and then they'll get an appointment. They'll get a temporary lockbox code, so they can go at their scheduled time. They can get access to the unit themselves without anybody being there in person, and then if you're using it by itself, it'll help with some of the they can apply through there and do their background credit check. I will say their background credit check side of the software is not very good. The showing part is very valuable, but that Show Mojo, I've talked to other people that do property management, and people seem to like it. I still think that in person, real life is probably the best way to do it if you can do it that way. But if you're going to do it remotely, I think having something like Show Mojo where they can do it, go straight to the unit, show it its temporary code would be easier than having somebody like we see some local property managers with like they come and pick up a key from the office and then they have to bring it back and then they forget to bring it back and it's like that just sounds like a nightmare to me. So yeah,
Yeah, no,
I think that's
we
the
do the
only
same. We
property
do,
management.
yeah, we do some virtual showings as well, but I hold the same opinion as you. I think your highest closing rate is when you have someone there, they can talk through, hey, do they have an objection? They can talk through it right now. There's a little bit of pressure that, hey, they came out and met me and they can put an application in their hand right that second. And so I think that gap hasn't been bridged, but still, you have certain people that work weird hours and they need to look at a unit at 8 p.m. And it's not realistic that you're going to have somebody there at 8 p.m. So you've got to have both. But I think for now, the highest value is still having somebody walk through that unit with them whenever
Yeah, yeah, cool. I guess shifting from property management, any other like online tools, and this might be more, well, I guess it could be like evaluating deals or on the construction side, but any kind of like mapping tools or anything like that. And I guess before we get too far into that, one that comes into mind for me that's like kind of it's like a mapping tool. Well, not so much a mapping tool, but it's like if I want to find out who owns a piece of property and or market to that piece of property, one that I've found a bunch of value in. It's worked really well for me is Deal Machine. Have you ever heard of that? Yeah, so it's an app. I personally think anybody that's interested in real estate investing in any capacity, whether it's at your guys' level or just starting out, should have it. But it's you can download the app. It's literally you sign up for it and you can pull up a map on the app. And if you're looking at a house or a piece of land or a lot or whatever, if you're parked in front of it, and we use it like people call it driving for dollars, but we'll use it if we're just out and about. If I see, say, a vacant lot or a vacant piece of land or a fixer-upper house, I can click on the address and it'll actually give me the owner's information and some tax record type information really quickly. But you can take a step above that where you can take a picture of the property and I can send a mailer to the owner and say, hey, my name's Chase Calhoun. I'm a real estate investor. I'd like to buy this property. Here's a picture of it. It's located at this address. Give me a call if you'd be interested in selling it. Again, it's not how big commercial deals necessarily would make sense, but on a smaller scale, like I've used it a lot to buy houses or small apartments or even land. We've used it a bunch lately to buy like infill lots. It'll send like four postcards. It'll send a postcard every and you can adjust it, but like every 3 weeks for like 4 months, they'll get a postcard saying that we want to buy this lot. And I've bought a ton of properties like that. So that Deal Machine from a mapping, off market deal app has been a cool little tech tool that I've used a bunch.
That's super interesting. I've never used it. I use Landglide a ton,
Yeah.
which is similar except for the mailing feature. So it
Yeah.
shows property owners. We use it a lot when looking at land because it shows property boundaries and it obviously gives your live location. So we can walk property, tell exactly where we are at on the property. It shows flood zone, topo contours, all that stuff. And so we use that, you know, probably nearly every day I use Land Glide. And so that's a super helpful tool. Another really interesting tool that we actually just found out about this week is, so obviously Google Maps, everybody's familiar with, but if you use Google Earth, you can go to a certain particular site and you can look back at all of their historical satellite images. And so we've used them to analyze, hey, what's this property been used for over the past, sometimes they've got satellite images going back 20 years. And so you
That's
can
crazy.
tell if work's been done on it, what's been done over time. You can usually tell if somebody's blasted, things like that. And so we used it just last week, and it was super useful to just give a little history. And obviously now in recent years, they've got satellite images almost every year. And so, but I didn't realize you could select. And so when you go to Google Earth instead of Google Maps, you can kind of roll back through those satellite images. And so it's been super useful for us on a couple pieces of property to figure out the history of it. And so that's one that we found out about just last week.
The Google Street View one is one that we've used a lot as well. Like if you're trying to look at something real quick and you can do that street image. I used it yesterday because I'm in this big old it turned into a title dispute, but it's about an easement. And it's like we had somebody trying to say that the way that this house has always been accessed is not correct or wasn't how it was accessed in the past. And just yesterday, I went on Google Street View, and it's like you could drive the little car up to the house the way that it's been accessed, and it shows like the cars being parked where they're being parked now. And so it's like it's literally an image from 10 years ago, proving what we're trying to show. And so that's this is something that may actually end up going to court. And like if it goes to court, like that's going to be something that's going to be pretty hard to argue with, is those old images from Google from years ago that kind of show it's always been used that certain way. As far as mapping goes, the other one I would say we use a lot, and it's probably a local thing, but usually depending on where I'm looking, and it could be a different city, but I'll Google Little Rock GIS sewer GIS map or Little Rock water GIS map, and usually whatever municipality you're in, they're going to have online published maps that show underground utilities. And so whenever we're looking at either pieces of land for potential development or even just infill lots, like one thing that we want to be very certain of that we're double checking to make sure, especially with infill lots, that there's like water and sewer on site. The only caution I would give is they're supposed to be very accurate. We have learned kind of painfully a couple times in the last year or two that we need to verify. So it's like those mapping tools are great, and it's they're pretty close, but sometimes they're always not 100% accurate. We did a couple new builds on infill lots probably in the last year where the sewer, it'll show the depth on the GIS map where how deep the sewer is supposed to be, but it's been off a couple times, sometimes by quite a bit. We had one that was like supposed to be 8 feet deep, and it ended up being 3 feet deep, and required a grinder pump and a bunch of extra costs. And then we had one recently that was supposed to be 8 feet deep, and it was like 18 feet deep, and required a bunch of additional excavation to get to it. And so they're helpful for like a quick check, but I would say um, if it's going to be a concern, you probably want to verify that they're 100% accurate.
Yeah, we use the same thing. The other thing we use those maps for, and it depends on the city and kind of their sophistication, but it also generally shows like the water pressure. Um,
Oh well.
and that's big for us because we have to sprinkle everything. And so we need a certain amount of pressure to be able to push water. And like we have a big multifamily site where we had to install a booster pump because we
Mhm.
weren't getting enough flow on the site. And so generally they have their pressure testing, which again can vary, certainly needs to be field verified, but definitely super useful for determining, hey, this property's a little out of town. How close is sewer? Is it one property away? Is it a mile away? Is it right here? And so definitely very useful to just take a first glance. And generally they're pretty easy to use as well.
Cool. We'll roll through a couple more of these fairly quickly. Do you guys do anything special for like virtual tours or photos or anything like that. We're kind of old school when it comes to that. We're literally we'll pay a professional photographer to go out and photograph a house or units, and then we save those photos. But we're not doing anything fancy when it comes to 3D tours or anything like that. How about you?
We do some Matterport
Okay,
3D tours where you it walks through the unit, and then we definitely historically have paid for drone footage of our properties as well,
cool.
just from a marketing perspective to
Yeah,
have like a site overview. Um, and then one interesting thing that we're doing right now is we bought a drone just last month, and we're using it to capture as builts for our properties. And so, like when sprinklers go in the ground before they're covered up, we'll fly the drone up, we'll take an aerial picture, and then it's the easiest way to get a real historical record of, hey, this is where everything is. And so we've started doing that for a variety of things. Um, and so it's something that we first did a couple of years ago and kind of got off of it, but it makes it really easy to keep records of, especially when you're burying stuff underground, finding it again is always a challenge. And so we've been using drones pretty regularly lately, just to make sure that we're keeping good records so that we can fix problems later on down the road.
that's awesome. That's a good idea. I never would have thought about that. How about and this is something that I know we should be doing, but we're not doing a great job out of it. Did you do any kind of like CRM or basically? I mean, and I know for you, like it may be a little bit different, but for us, like where I know we need to be doing it is like, for example, we're constantly looking for deals on infill lots and or land or whatever. And it's like you'll talk to somebody, I'll talk to somebody, or Ryan will talk to somebody, and it's like, hey, we should really follow up with this guy in 6 months because he may not be ready to sell for what we want right now. But if we followed up on it, he probably would. And then we never do because we don't have a CRM. So are you using anything like that just to keep track on those kind of contacts?
We're not. Again,
Yeah.
we're in the same boat. We should. We definitely should. It's all done manually or with the assistance of agents and stuff like that. But there are definitely holes in that game for sure. So
Well, I
we
guess
don't
that's
use one, but we need to.
if anybody's listening and they got a good one they recommend because we've been kind of researching them and the ones we've looked at are like overly complicated for what we need. We just need something very
Right.
basic. And so I definitely love some CRM recommendations because that's something where we lack. And I know even if it's just something simple like, hey, this is a broker in my community that's active. Like I should probably follow up with him once every 3 months just to see if he's got anything coming up. Because sometimes being top of mind is important because if they don't know you're looking for something, they're not going to necessarily remember to call you themselves. And so, if anybody's got any CRM recommendations, I'd love to hear it. The only last one that comes to mind for me is project management. We use Asana for construction project management. I know like Builder Trend and there's some other ones out there that are pretty popular. Asana is not necessarily construction specific, but we started using it for that about 2 years ago. And then we've spent a little bit of money to kind of build it out a little bit better. And so that's what we're using right now. It seems to work fairly well, but I've heard that there's other ones that are probably even better. But we're happy with Asana. Are you using anything for project management right now?
We're really not. I have some friends who use Builder Trend on the single family side and love it. We're, a spreadsheet and a pad of paper right now is kind of how we do it. And it works relatively well. I think there are some things that we could change, but when you talk about CRMs, we've run into the same thing with software on the project management side that it is so complicated. The lift is so heavy to like get all the information in that it almost dissuades us from using it because the value at that point is it's just in the information which we already have. And so I'm sure there's some good thing that is out there that maybe we should be using, but for now we're just sticking with the tried and true method of a legal pad and a spreadsheet, and so it's working so far. But I'd love to hear what people are using as well, because that's a constant question and a constant debate we have on our team. Because there are definitely advantages to it, but there are also a lot of sophistication points where our sub's going to use it. There's a lot of things about will it really pay off in the long run, and so I'd be interested to hear what everybody's doing.
We're still trying to figure it out with Asana, but I'd also love to hear if anybody's got any better recommendations. But yeah, it's kind of like we have to hire extra people just to manage the software, manage the project instead of just managing the project. Might as well just do that.
Exactly.
So, but it's supposed to make it easier. I don't know. I think that's it. You got, for me at least, you got any other big software tools? I mean, my Google Calendar, that's another. I use my Google Calendar a bunch, and that's like a free one for everybody. Like I highly recommend getting in that, plugging in, and I put everything in there. It's like family time and Bible studies and workouts and job, appointments and podcasts and whatever I'm doing goes into my Google Calendar. I rely on that a bunch.
Yeah, I live and die by my calendar as well. I have Calendly, which
Okay.
kind of links a couple different calendars I have, like family calendar and work calendar, and it kind of combines everything, which has been pretty helpful. Um, and then the only other thing I would say is just kind of, obviously we talked about AI already, but leveraging AI in any of these things, and like when I'm thinking about softwares, I haven't asked AI those questions, and so even as we're talking, I'm thinking, man, I really should have approached this a little differently, and so I think plugging that stuff in as well, and I think pretty quickly we'll see a lot more integrations of AI into calendars, into email, and so I think those things will be pretty impactful pretty quick.
For sure. Cool, man. Well, I think that's kind of it for the tech tools one. For everybody listening, if you guys get something out of this or you enjoy it, please don't forget to like the podcast or follow along with us and then share it with people who you think may find value out of it. And thanks again, Jack, and we'll see you next time.
Absolutely. See you.